Hey everyone, I'm Claire Liu and I'm the CEO of Know Your Team, and I am really excited to have today Bryce Roberts, who is the founder of IndieVC, this really amazing, very unconventional venture firm that looks to invest in businesses that are wanting to be revenue focused and build sustainable growth. And in addition to that, Bryce has co-founded OATV Ventures along with Tim O'Reilly, and has been a venture capitalist for I think 15 some years, and someone who I've really respected and admired, and has worked with so many leaders across a lot of different industries. So Bryce, very excited to learn a little bit about your leadership experience today.
Awesome. I'm excited.
All right, well, so here's the question, Bryce, that I've been asking leaders who I respect and admire, which is, what's one thing you wish you would have learned earlier as a leader? And it can be more than one.
I think that, I think for me personally and for a lot of the founders that I work with, I wish I would have learned that it's okay to be a mediocre leader early and grow into it over time. I think that it's okay to not be a great leader when you start. I think especially when you're younger and when you're in a new situation, you are often hypercritical of yourself, your skills. You know all of your biggest gaps in skills and kind of EQ and all of that. And I think you end up using others as a measuring stick for that. And so I think you tend to look at really accomplished leaders and feel yourself being so much less. And I think that probably I would have been easier on myself and said it's okay to be kind of not as effective as a leader, but to embrace it and to just try to incrementally improve, as opposed to I think where I see a lot of founders get in trouble with their own leadership development is, they want to move from phase 1 to phase 10 in a year, instead of recognizing in so many respects, in doing that, what you might lose is actually your individual, unique contribution as a leader, instead of just trying to mirror what other leaders you respect or read about or even your mentors do. Mm-hmm. Giving yourself time and permission to develop your own leadership style, and to figure out, kind of how to reflect yourself and your values and your leadership more than just kind of writing down a checklist, because I think everybody loves a checklist. But I think you lose out on what you kind of uniquely can contribute by adhering, unbendingly to a checklist.
Absolutely. I'm nodding my head as you were saying that, because who doesn't love the checklist, right? You're saying that I can't just follow the checklist? No, and I'm also nodding and smiling over here, Bryce, because that is such a refreshing and encouraging notion, I think, for so many current leaders and aspiring leaders who are going, oh, I kind of suck at this, or this is a lot harder for me than it seems for my peers or for other people who've traveled a similar path. So it's very encouraging to hear that. I'm curious for you, when did this insight happen? Were you did you have certain role models you were looking at, or was there something that happened where you realized, maybe I should just be a little bit easier on myself, or maybe, I learned this thing about my own leadership style because I wasn't trying so hard to adhere to that checklist? Curious what triggered this insight.
That's a great question. I mean, I think a big part of it was, especially early in my career, I really wanted somebody to save me. I really wanted a great mentor. I wanted somebody to just tell me how to do things and show me the ropes. And that person never materialized. And so, I've had great friends and coworkers, and I've had great moments where I've had insight with individuals, but I wouldn't say there was any one time where someone like took me under their wing, showed me the ropes, showed me what leadership looked like,
right,
on that kind of consistent and ongoing basis. And so, I think I probably spun a lot of cycles and a lot of energy trying to find that person until I realized, maybe I just need to be a composite of, the different pieces that I've picked up along the way. And even though I think I really longed for that, like you hear that story about the person who takes that young one under their wing and they kind of shepherd them through this kind of amazing career, and at their eulogy, like they're talking about this person, the impact they had. That's kind of what I thought would happen. But then I think there got to be a point in my career where it was like, and I would say, this is probably just within the last 5 to 6 years, really, for me, was like, okay, no one's coming to save me. No one's going to show me exactly how to do what it is I want to do. And that's probably a good thing. Probably nobody can show me exactly the path I want to go down, but if I can take the pieces that I picked up along the way and make them mine as a leader, I can then leave my own impact on the companies that I work with, the industry that I work in, that maybe someone who had a more conventional mentor, maybe I wouldn't have been able to have those insights or been able to do some of the things that I have been able to do because I would have maybe adhered too closely to that, or I would have thought that's kind of how it has to be done. And so I think, you asked when I had that, and like I said, I think a big part of that for me was in 2010 to 2012, I moved out to the Bay Area because that's where venture capital and startups happen. And, a big part of moving back home to Salt Lake City in 2012 was acknowledging to myself, like, no one is coming to save me. I've been to Mecca. I've seen how it all works. And some of that I want to keep with me, but a lot of that, like, I don't necessarily have to, I don't have to accept whole cloth. I can actually kind of take the best parts of it. And so I think for me that was, a powerful, insightful, mentally, but also physically being able to abstract myself away and make a longer term bet on, my own leadership over time.
Totally. Two things that are really fascinating, Bryce, about what you're saying. One, you are advocating for, I think, a very unconventional take or path on leadership, which is like, don't find a mentor, or like reject the mentor, right? I feel like how many LinkedIn articles do you see where it's like, the key to success in building your career and becoming a better leader, go find a mentor, go find the person who's in the job or who's been in that leadership position for 10 plus years. And you're saying almost the opposite, which is one, that person might not even exist, and two, if they do, you can't expect them to save you, and three, actually, go and chart your own path. So I think that's fascinating. And I think when I think about my own leadership path, I think the desire to find that mentor, and I've had wonderful mentors, but the one, like you were saying, the person who you sort of eulogize at the end of at the end of your life, comes from a place of insecurity more than it does of a true desire to learn something. And then the second thing that I thought was really fascinating is this implication that actually physical space has a lot to do with your personal development. And I think as a leader, you don't really think about that very intentionally. So I love both of those insights. So this leads me to my next question, Bryce, then, which is for anyone who's watching this, right, and they're a current leader or an aspiring leader, and they're hearing your advice, and they're going, okay, Bryce is telling me not to, maybe not to seek out a mentor, not to rely on someone to save me, which is, how do you then develop your own voice? How do you sort of piece together, as you were saying, and figure out what your individual contribution is? And was it a physical move? Is it reading certain things or talking to a community of people versus just going to one person? Would love to hear your take on that.
That's something that I probably, I don't know that I've got all the answers to that one, but I know what helped me, in part was being hungry for feedback from peers, from companies, from partners in business.
Yes.
To figure out how, like, okay, what am I trying to do that I'm just not good at, and I should avoid, and what are the things that they appreciate or want from me that I'm able to contribute that they highly value, right? And so I think, my business partner, Tim O'Reilly, and we have a third partner, Mark Jacobs at OATV, it was very unconventional how our partnership started. We were three people who'd never worked together before, and we are now, almost 14 years into a partnership. And in living through that experience, it was clear, like, there were things that I was really good at that some of my partners weren't, and they were really good at things that I wasn't either. And so I think allowing those conversations to happen, I think that was a big part in terms of me developing as a leader, was listening to my partners, hearing the things that I wasn't doing well, hearing the things that they valued, and being able to do more of that or express more of myself in those things. And I think that's across the board, from my business partners all the way down to our support staff.
Yep.
I think the other part that I found helpful was just to ask, the people around me, like, and for me, I'm a relatively self-deprecating guy, and so I will often say, like, I'm terrible at this stuff, and say that in the presence of, like, the people who I work with, and, they don't always, like, jump on board and say, oh, no, you're not, and that's the idea. It's like, well, here's what you can improve, right? Like,
sure.
Here's the things you're doing well, here's the things we value about you, and I think, more than anything, it's that openness to feedback, and then it's that, I think it's reflecting your values and who you are consistently in the way you work, the way you communicate, the way you operate in the office, outside of the office. I think there's a whole picture of a person that starts to evolve as as someone that, people are looking to them for leadership, that they have to have it's hard to be one thing, and ask something. And so I think that consistency has been pretty important.
Definitely. I think,
so,
I love that. And in many ways, the answers are all in asking questions and digging for the truth of what you really are, what you're really good at, and especially what you're really not good at. So I love that answer. I'm also curious, Bryce, as a venture capitalist, you are in a very unique perspective, especially, over the past years, to have gotten a glimpse and slice of so many different types of leaders, and especially emerging leaders, whether it's first-time founders or founders who are going through, their fifth company, but a ton of different types of leaders. And in many ways, you were in this position to place bets on these leaders. So I'm curious, for you, what have you seen, whether it's traits, behaviors, values that you've noticed, one, you gravitate towards those types of leaders, or in the firms that you run actually choose to invest in? Are there certain leaders that stand out, and why?
In terms of attributes, I think given the way I try to write, and I try to be fairly transparent about how we operate, I think it tends to attract a certain kind of entrepreneur. It's probably one who, probably has a little bit less strong of a reality distortion feel, you might call it. I think it's someone who probably is as interested in getting the ground truth as we are. It's probably someone who's maybe got a little bit higher EQ. It's someone who, probably is, as aware of their shortcomings as they are of their, the things they're good at. And I think those end up being healthy attributes in doses, right? I mean, I do think when it comes to, this is something that I wrestle with, and that, I think there's a healthy amount of self-awareness and group awareness, and then there's probably there's that fine line where it switches over to hypersensitivity to that, and that's unhealthy.
Yes.
And then there's like where you really crank the volume up on that, and then you're completely oblivious, and your whole team hates you, and no one trusts you. But it's like that fine line of like just short of self-awareness is actually probably a pretty great sweet spot for an entrepreneur, at least. That like they recognize some of their own shortcomings, but they aren't crippled by them, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, I think I think that's such a wonderful insight, because I think it's Ben Horowitz, who's written a ton about how managing your psychology as a founder is one of the most important things that you can do. And what you're talking about, though, is specifically self-awareness and the line between self-delusion and neurosis. And so finding sort of
well, as an investor, like that's the role you have to play. You want someone who's running so far ahead that you have to reel them in. The last thing you want to work with as an investor is someone you have to feel like you're pushing, to kind of think bigger or be more aggressive. You want someone who is kind of always running ahead and thinking bigger and dreaming bigger, but then you can also kind of sit down with them and have a conversation about kind of what's real and what's not.
Totally.
And that they still, despite the fact that they can see and project that bigger vision, that they can sit down today and be not emotionless, but less emotional about what's going on in the business and the current state of things. I find that those entrepreneurs, we tend to get great results working with those kinds of people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I think that's incredibly helpful and something for all of us who are watching to reflect on and consider where on that spectrum they might be. So cool. Well, hey Bryce.
But I do think that, just one last point.
Please.
Think that one of the it's probably the piece that VCs probably talk least about, because most are out talking about growth hacking and how to raise your next round and all that stuff. I think the piece that I would imagine is universal across all investors is the satisfaction that comes from believing in somebody before anybody else does about their capacity as a leader is really, that's really at the heart of what makes venture as an industry or as a practitioner rewarding, is when you can step back and you can say, wow, I really did see something in that person, and I was able to invest not only my dollars but my time in helping. And even though none of us would take credit for who that person becomes, like you can see a little bit of influence on that person. And I think that's been hands down the most rewarding part of this job, is seeing those individuals kind of step into their potential. If we can play some small role in that, I think that's ultimately what all investors are after, because it's from there that all the other good stuff in our business happens.
Absolutely. No, I love that sentiment. And to your point, so little talked about, and sort of recognizing and seeing people and betting on people before they do make it big. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for first of all doing that and contributing that, and for all your insights, Bryce. I learned a lot, and I know everyone who's watching did too. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.